2022 turned out to be a big year for Warner Bros. Discovery, especially when it came to the DC brand. The new version of the company isn't giving up on the DCU anytime soon, as James Gunn and Safran are now in charge of DC Studios. So sit back and relax as we give you an exciting update about Gunn's DCU plan and discuss the reason he was chosen to lead the DCU. Starting off with a recent update about the DCU's plan. During a recent conversation, Warner Bros. Discovery CEO David Zaslav talked about the future of the DCU, including Safran and Gunn's new plans for the brand. Well, according to Zaslav, they both want to expand DC's full potential in a way that hasn't been done yet. They better. In the interview, Zaslav talked about how over the next few years we're going to see a lot of growth and opportunity around DC, but there's not going to be 4 Batmans. Bye-bye Batfleck, we guess. As for their strategy, it's driving the hell out of DC, which James and Peter will do. Sounds thrilling. Also, Zaslav and the new duo have all talked positively about a 10-year plan for the DCU, but it's still unclear what they'll do with the franchise. Based on the few cryptic details that have come out recently, it looks like the focus is not just on using more of the big players, but also on using some of the less well-known DC characters. Seems familiar, doesn't it? Coming up, what could Gunn and Safran's DCU master plan look like? As of now, many fans think that Gunn and Safran are starting over with the DCU, and here's the thing. They aren't. Instead, they are refocusing on what has worked so far and making the most of it. So, with his work on last year's Suicide Squad, Peacemaker, and more upcoming mystery projects, Gunn is already a part of this connected universe. So it makes more sense to keep going with the DCU instead of starting over. Also, HBO Max is a key part of DC Studios' plans for the future, and we think this is a step in the right direction for Warner Bros. Discovery when it comes to using the DC brand to its fullest. Having not only one but 2 people in charge of DC's TV, movies, and animation will help bring a sense of unity that hasn't been there in recent years. We've seen longtime DCU actors like Henry Cavill and Jason Momoa already rave about Gunn and Safran's plans for DC Studios, and we guess it's up to time to tell what they have in store for DCU fans. Moving on to, so why is James Gunn chosen to lead the DCU? The appointment of James Gunn as the new creative lead and co-CEO of the DCU shouldn't come as a surprise, even though his last year's The Suicide Squad did poorly at the box office. Gunn and co-CEO Peter Safran took over running DC Studios on November 1st, 2022, and this will keep Gunn in the DC universe for the next 4 years. But currently, he'll keep working with Marvel on the Guardians of the Galaxy Holiday Special and Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, both of which were announced before he was made DCU's CEO. And it's safe to say that his past work for the MCU is regarded as one of the best comic book adaptations in recent years. But after his next 2 Marvel projects come out, Gunn's primary focus will only be guiding DC Studios into the future, followed by Gunn's impressive comic book knowledge could be impactful for the DCU. It's common knowledge that Gunn has a lot of knowledge about comics and his stories are funny and full of life. But the success of the Suicide Squad at the box office doesn't really show what he can really do with DC Studios. Yes, his impressive portfolio with big budget productions and his preference for character-driven stories still point to a bright future for DC, but we also think that Gunn's takeover as the leader of the DCU is happening at a very important time. We saw the success of Black Adam at the box office and how it's brought the franchise back to life after the pandemic kept people from going to the movies. And Cavill's return as Superman in Black Adam should be good news for Gunn, as he wants the Justice League to be at the center of the saga. But with the recent chaos over the cancellation of Batgirl and WB's merger with Discovery, Gunn's new role marks the start of a more unified vision for DC going forward, and we think the future is gonna be Gunn-tastic. What's more, the Suicide Squad's box office isn't really a true reflection of his magic. Well, most of the disagreement about Gunn's new job as creative lead at DC is based on how poorly the Suicide Squad did at the box office. The movie made just under $170 million worldwide but cost $185 million to make. And taking into account the extra costs of marketing, the movie proved to be a huge commercial failure. But that's the thing, Gunn can't be blamed for the movie's lackluster performance at the box office, especially since it came out during the pandemic and went straight to HBO Max. Clearly, the simultaneous streaming of the movies greatly affected how well 2021 movies did at the box office, and obviously movies that were only released theatrically did much better. Not to mention, most of the reviews and reactions to the Suicide Squad were great. Unlike the other recent DC movies, the Suicide Squad mostly got good reviews when it first came out. Critics gave the movie a good score of 90%, and audiences gave a similar score of 82% on Rotten Tomatoes, when compared to David Ayer's Suicide Squad from just 5 years ago, which got a 26% score from critics and a 58% score from audiences. These scores are a huge improvement. There were rumors that Ayer's ideas for the 2016 movie Suicide Squad weren't taken into account, which could have led to a different version of the movie like Snyder's Justice League. But Gunn wouldn't say what would happen with the Ayer's cut of Suicide Squad. Instead, he's focusing on the story going forward, hammering out the new DCU, and telling the biggest story ever told across multiple films, TV shows, and animated projects. And we think this is a great sign for DC because Gunn's success with the Suicide Squad and Peacemaker shows that he could be the worthy heir of the DC studios. Up next, Peacemaker also proved that Gunn is the right choice. It's safe to say that Peacemaker is one of Gunn's pleasant surprises to the comic book world. Yes, he's an interesting character on his own, but it's clear that Gunn knows how to take unfamiliar characters and give the audience a good reason to care about them. The show's heart is the group of different people who come together to become the 11th Street Kids. And we saw Gunn's love of a found family dynamic shine through again. Being the show's creator lets his ideas shine both in front of and behind the camera. He's also written for all 8 episodes and directed 5 of them. Notably, Gunn's signature sense of humor is all over a series with surprisingly mature undertones of loss, grief, and family trauma. He also manages to include a few less well-known characters from the comics in a mostly self-contained story. And we think all of this makes Peacemaker the DCU's first successful TV show. Now let's look at Gunn's successful career. In the MCU so far, Gunn has a great choice to direct the Guardians, who, as a group, are naturally funny, and his style fits well with the tone of the MCU. And even though the first 2 Guardians movies weren't the most integral part of the Infinity Saga, they did a great job of showing how each member of the Ragtag group has their own unique traits. Also, Gunn's new job at DC makes his future in Marvel uncertain, as next year's Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 will be his last scheduled movie to release. And this makes him the perfect person to start a more cohesive time for DC, mainly because he focuses on the heroes of his stories rather than the bad guys. Finally, that brings us to why Gunn is the best choice to lead the DCU. In the past, Gunn's comic book adaptations haven't done a great job with the bad guys. Ego, the Living Planet, did raise the bar as a more interesting foe, but in the grand scheme of the MCU, he doesn't matter much. Also, the biggest thing about the Suicide Squad isn't that Starro the Conqueror is bigger than life, and in Peacemaker, Gunn's main focus isn't on Judo Master, the White Dragon, or Goff. Instead, Gunn focuses on the heroes of his projects and treats them with care. There's also a strong focus on teamwork in Gunn's adaptations of comic books, which is a theme that runs throughout them. The Guardians movies, the Suicide Squad, and Peacemaker all have this same heart, with well-developed characters that are easy to root for. And hopefully, Gunn will give each director the freedom to develop their own versions of future villains for the franchise. But for now, we think James Gunn will take good care of the DCU's heroes. And that's all for this video, so do you think James Gunn is the right man to take the DCU to new heights? Let us know in the comments below. Also, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more exciting content in the future. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.